listening to Covering the Field with your host, Joe Ellison.
Welcome to Covering the Field, where we analyze all sports, handicap them, and make and review predictions. I'm your host, Joe Ellison, and today we'll be covering the National Hockey League and Major League Baseball with Sean Gates. But we'll lead off with the NBA playoffs and my first guest, Charles O'Loughlin. How are you doing today, Charles?
Great, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. But before we get to the recent NBA results and predictions, it seems the big story this year in the playoffs has been injuries. 8 All-Stars have missed playoff games due to injury, for a record total of 9 if you count COVID. And players are blaming this year's COVID condensed schedule for these injuries. The NBA says things are not any worse than versus past years, and critics say many of those particular players are guys who usually get hurt, also got hurt during the regular season, and if some of them trained all year round, Anthony Davis, maybe they wouldn't have got hurt in the first place. What's your take on this injury situation, Charles, that has deprived teams and fans many of their star players?
Joe, I'd have to say injuries are injuries. When the bug bites, the bug bites. But I do have to agree with you. If players trained year-round and didn't take so many breaks from the games, I think their bodies would be more acclimated to what the game entails.
Well, so you're kind of leaning towards the critics, and maybe it's the players themselves, maybe getting paid a little too much, getting a little too comfortable, and not putting forth the effort necessary.
Well, I would have to say so.
All right. Well, remember, it was the players themselves agreed to this condensed 72-game schedule, and in return, they received their normal regular season revenue. So they've been duly compensated for these injuries.
That they have.
Yes, indeed. And I would say many of them are way overpaid, but that's a story for another day. But moving on to predictions and to the Western Conference Finals. Between the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers, in Game 1, Phoenix's Devin Booker went off for a 40-point triple-double to lead his team over a Clipper squad that appeared to run out of gas late after the Game 7 victory over Utah 2 days earlier. Game 2 last night was an instant classic, with 5 replay reviews in the last minute 30. Any thoughts on the instant replay review situation we had last night?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of it, Joe. I like the instant replay. When in situations, big games like that, you definitely have to make sure you get the call right. Absolutely. But that definitely slows down the momentum of the game. And basketball is a very momentum game, and extra time like that gives the opponent or the team with the ball the extra opportunity to drop a play that they might not have if that review that takes 3, 4, 5 minutes wasn't taking place. And you want to talk about a crazy review, how about the last one after Ayton made that shot, and it took them about 10 minutes to figure out the 10 players that were on the court. So because there was no substitutions allowed to be made after that, which I thought was really dragged the game on. So I think it's good to have the replays, but we have to compromise at some point with it.
You mentioned that alley-oop pass. Was that ball in that cylinder when that ball was slam dunked into that ball?
It looked really close, but like I said, I've watched the whole game. I watched every review angle that they showed on the ESPN, and I'd have to say it wasn't. It was that looked like it took a lot of practice and was just perfectly timed.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's say a defender had touched the ball the same way that offensive player had touched it. Then might they have called goaltending?
For sure. Then it might have been a little bit of a problem.
So we always lean towards the offense in sports when it comes to replay, or it seems that way. Would you be in favor of shortening from 2 minutes to maybe 1 minute the time for the replay reviews, or are you satisfied with the last 2 minutes?
I'm satisfied with the last 2 minutes. I just think there has to be a cutoff, maybe no more than 3 reviews, or there is a challenge per team. I think maybe we should just stick with that. The game's the game. Last night when Patrick Beverly got in there and knocked the ball out for it to go out of bounds when Booker had it. He was telling the refs, rerun that, and they ended up giving the ball back to the Clips. And there was some controversy with that because, Patrick Beverly, Booker might have been about just sliding off his hands as as Beverly was pushing it to go out. But Beverly is the one who made the momentum of the basketball go out of bounds. So, like I said, when you get in those situations, it really starts to kind of get tricky with the rules. And I think the league and the association should definitely come down a little bit tighter on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the rules do change once you come down to this slow motion instant replay. Because 99 times out of 100, the offense gets the ball out of balance on that. But if you're going to review it in the last minute and look it over and over again, you're going to see maybe he had the ball on his hand a little extra longer before it went out of bounds.
Maybe the refs had money line.
No, there you go. Somebody told him to make that call. But anyway, getting back to that game, it was more than just that review that was key to the game. LA's Paul George missed 2 free throws. Here's an 86% free throw shooter missing 2 free throws with 8 seconds left, and the Clippers leading by 1, which led to Phoenix then scoring on the Valley Oop with 0.7 seconds remaining to win the game. Phoenix is up 2-0, is on a 9-game winning streak, and now gets point guard Chris Paul back after his bout with COVID. Charles, tell us what you thought about the end of that. What you think about this series so far? Predictions, overs and unders, how you think this series will end?
Yeah, it was very unfortunate that Paul George missed both of those. Thing about free throws is it's the only thing in the game that's free. You got to make them. So if he makes one of them, it's a tied game. We go into OT, or Phoenix has to take a harder shot to win the game. He makes both of them. It's a different outcome. Or like I said, Phoenix takes a very difficult shot. So it's a bummer that he couldn't make those. You could see in his eyes that he was really let his team down on that. They're probably happy they go back to LA. And this is, dangerous waters for the Suns. They're up. Chris Paul's, has playoff experience, but the team is very young. And the Clippers have come back 0-2 against the Mavs, 0-2 against the Jazz, and they're 0-2 right now. Now, granted, they did have, in my opinion, the best player in the league, Kawhi Leonard. I don't know if he comes back for this series simply because as an organization, as a front office, as an owner, as a player, you sit back and you say, do we really risk next season or this player's career for a game or two or to win this series? Nothing's guaranteed in basketball, and I think that's gone to show throughout this playoff series with all these superstar teams getting knocked out. So Chris Paul coming back is going to be great for the Suns. I'm a Clippers fan. I would love to see the Clippers come back, but I think the Suns are going to get it. I'd say Suns in 5 or 6.
Well, me being a Laker fan, I do not like the Clippers, so I'm glad to hear your prediction. And but the Clippers have never been in a conference finals before. If they're going to go to their first NBA finals, they'll be the first team ever to overcome 1-0 deficits in all 3 series, let alone 2-0 deficits in all 3.
And I just want to say this, Joe. If it's going to be anybody, it's going to be Kawhi. I mean, we've seen him do some crazy things throughout his career. So, if he decide to come back, if he is healthy enough, that organization is keeping a lot of things under wraps with that injury. If anybody can do it, it would be Kawhi.
Well, let's say he does come back this series. There's another series after that also in the finals. So there's much more potential for more injury.
Absolutely.
Down the road. So they'll have to be super careful about that. But anyway, another factor, LA has played 10 straight games on 1 day rest. And without Leonard, I mean, of course, I jumped on the Suns bandwagon the second they beat my beloved LA Lakers. And now that they're healthy and there's no Leonard, I'm picking Phoenix in 6. I'm giving the Clippers a couple games.
Well,
Just
the way Beverly played last night, I think you have to give them a couple games. He was a pest. He defense will wear an offense down. I think you keep that attitude. I definitely think you have to give them a couple games.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see a short series, and so we'll see how that goes. Moving on to the Eastern Conference, personally, I'm thrilled the Milwaukee Bucks overcame that 2-0 deficit to defeat Brooklyn and the supposed big three of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and the big shill, Kevin Durant. Who did you pick in that series, Charles, and who are you rooting for?
I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't the Nets. I had quite a bit of money on them going all the way and winning the chip. I think Kevin Durant is an animal when he's on, but unfortunately it goes to show you how much chemistry does come into play when it comes to basketball. James Harden was not hitting his shots. Kyrie goes down, and when you put a lot of things on 1, 2, 3 players, when those couple of those players are not on, it's a recipe for disaster. So, we'll see what can happen next year.
Well, the big three only played 14 games together this year, so the season certainly did not go as planned. But anyway, on the other side, Atlanta had been 0-9 in road playoff Game 7s before beating the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers. Charles, did the 76ers lose that series, or did the Hawks win it?
I would have to say the 76ers lost it. Big up to the Hawks. They got a good squad out there. They're building around Trae Young. I like what they're doing. But the 76ers definitely made their bed and they laid in it. I've never been a fan of Ben Simmons, and unfortunately, he's never been the guy to take the shot. And we noticed that when it was the Game 7. I think Joel Embiid is a little too inconsistent for me. So they lost the series for sure.
Well, Simmons was an all-star this year. But yes, he did seem to be a liability down the stretch. In fact, in the last 4 games of the series, he took no shots in the fourth quarter. And he's a terrible foul shooter. And he and superstar teammate Joel Embiid don't like each other. So now, speaking of next year, do the 76ers trade Simmons in the offseason?
That's but first I want to address this, Joe. You said he was an all-star this year, and yeah, he was, but pressure is beautiful. Pressure shows you what you're working with and what you're made of, and I think it goes to show us that when it came down to it, Ben Simmons doesn't have it, and so that will lead into what your next question is do they trade him? The question is, what could you get for him? Do you get a second rounder for him? Do you get a couple role players? For your first challenge is who wants to take on that contract? Second, you have to find something that's mutual between two teams, something that can give and take. And then third, he would have to come into a system where he has to be the third, fourth, fifth option. He can be a great lockdown defender. Great trade option would be if the 76ers were willing to go to the Warriors and the Warriors were willing to give up Draymond. Straight swap. You get a younger kid that's going to be your fourth, fifth option. Maybe if Houston wants to package something with a John Wall to get younger, to have a good defensive star there. But, your options are extremely limited when you're talking about dealing Ben Simmons.
Well, it sounds like he would have to go to a team where he would not be asked to score.
Absolutely. He'd have to be, a Pippen, play some defense.
All right. Well, the Warriors certainly would be an interesting choice there, but we'll see how that goes. And I do believe he will be not on the Sixers next year.
So then let me ask you this, Joe. Who does he go to?
The Warriors sounds good to me.
Warriors sounds good to you.
Yeah, that's it seems to fit where he can do that defense and rebound and all that. And in the fourth quarter, you got plenty of other guys to shoot the ball.
Absolutely. He doesn't have that pressure.
So, no, I like that call. And so now in the Eastern Finals, fear the deer as the Bucks and their 3 studs are healthy, and the favorite at minus 475 to win the series. Atlanta has no all-star players and is a 12-1 long shot to win the title. How do you see this series shaping up with game one tonight and any over and under trends you might see?
Yeah, sounds crazy. I took the Hawks at plus 370 today. I like them in 7. I think this is a great matchup. It's going to be fun for NBA fans to watch because the Bucks and the Hawks are perfect for each other. They allow each other to play each other's games. The Hawks have a lot of shooters, and Trae Young, who can do a great mid-range floater and dish out the ball. And the Bucks, they like to drive in, have Giannis go up and grab a lot of points. So I would go over on a lot of the Giannis props, and I would go over on a couple of the games because that's where I think it's going to head. I do like the Hawks, though, because like I said, the Bucks allow them to play their game. And also, back to the pressure factor, the Bucks have a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and I think that also played into the Sixers. When you're supposed to win, it does something to you. No one thought the Hawks would make it past the first round. Definitely didn't think they beat the Sixers. The Hawks are going to go out there loose as a goose and say, what do we have to lose? And I think that actually plays in their favor.
Well, let's say the Hawks make it to the finals. How do you think the ratings are going to be on TV?
That's a great question, Joe. I as a basketball purist, you would want to imagine they'd be great because there's no super teams. It just goes to show you that these super teams can be built, but they can also come tumbling down. And like I said, as a basketball purist, you have to really, truly enjoy that. If you're a fan of the game, you're going to watch. If you're a fan of superstars, you're probably not going to tune in. But the league's still going to make $1 trillion. So either way, I don't think it really matters.
Well, I'm going to go against you. I'm going to go with everybody else, most everybody else, and pick Milwaukee. I'll take them in 6. I do think the Hawks are going to win a couple of games, and they're going to look good. But, Milwaukee, obviously the new favorite at plus 105 to win the championship. Now, you're against me. Now you have the Hawks in the finals. I mean, do you have the Hawks winning it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I do not. The Suns are a very deadly team. They can rebound. They fight for rebounds. They can score on all 3 levels. And what's great about them is, once again, they're not a super team, but they're built how a team should be built. You have a good point guard that likes to pass the ball around, but can also go out there and score 30, which is a recipe a good formula to start with. And then you got Booker, who can drop 40, 50. You got Ayton, who can get rebounds. You got good role players. That's how an NBA team is supposed to be built. So I don't see anybody but Kawhi Leonard beating the Suns.
Well, this time we do agree, Charles, and I'm sticking with my new adopted team, Phoenix, now at only plus 110 to win their first ever world championship. So, Charles, we just had the NBA draft lottery yesterday. Detroit will pick number 1 in the draft. Houston, number 2. And Cleveland and Toronto moved up to number 3 and 4, respectively. Any thoughts about what happened and what to expect in next year's draft?
Yeah, I'm very pleased with the Pistons getting the first pick. They have an extremely young, talented core over there with Sadiq Bey, with Hayes, with Jackson, Grant, Stewart, a lot of young players. I think if you add I don't want to say a superstar, a player who has the potential to be very good in Cade Cunningham, or the guards out of Baylor, Wagner out of Michigan, you add a couple of those players in and you can really build something. Where it's going to get interesting for me is pick 2 and 3. What does Houston do? Where do they want to start? There's a big from SC coming out. Do you start big and build small? Do you build from the inside out? Or do you play in today's NBA and build from your outside or your wings in? Cavaliers have Sexton, and they got good guards. Do they go big? Do they get a wing? It's going to be very interesting. This year's draft has a lot of good players, a lot of potential. You got two great players coming out of Baylor that have You know, a championship and good defensive players. It's going to be exciting.
One last question for you, Charles, before I let you go. About the draft lottery, do you think it should be more transparent where we actually see the balls coming up through the ping pong thing like the Keno games we have here in town? Or do you trust the people who are in charge of this process and take it on the up and up that no one's manipulating the order of the draft?
You know, that all goes back to when David Stern was the commissioner and a huge New York Knicks fan, you know, and they think they did things in the lottery process for Ewing to end up being a Knick. So, you know, it depends on what side you sit on that. I think every league should adopt what the NFL does. Worst team gets the very first pick, and after that it trickles up. You know, it ends any conspiracies, and it allows, you may say, you know, tanking becomes an issue there. It does, but at the same time, I don't think you can look at professional athletes. I don't think you can look at guys that are making $20, $30 million and say, hey, go out and lose tonight, because they have to look at themselves in the mirror when they brush their teeth. And I don't think any competitive athlete wants to lose for a better draft pick.
Well, going back in time, yes, it was David Stern. That was back in the day when the commissioner picked envelopes out of a drum. And supposedly the New York Knicks was taped to the bottom of that drum, and he dug to the bottom and found the New York Knicks placard. And Patrick Ewing, who is by far and above easily the best player in that particular year's draft, ended up on the Knicks, and obviously, you know, they went to the championship and the NBA Finals. I don't think they won it, but they made it to the finals. Yes, I think they lost to the Rockets, if I remember correctly. But anyway, yeah. So Charles, I'd really like to thank you for your insight. Hopefully, your predictions do well, and we can get you back on the show again one of these days.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you for having me. And you know, just before we get out of here, I'd like to say I'm a big futures guy. Anybody that wants to play some futures, NCAA college basketball championship, go Razorbacks, 35-1. Go get them.
That'll be Eric Musselman's team, Nevada's old coach, and last year ran into Baylor in the quarterfinals, the eventual champion Baylor. So they could have easily gone to the finals themselves last year. So I thank you again, Charles. And that was Charles O'Laughlin. And next up, we're going to turn our attentions to the National Hockey League. We now turn our attentions to the National Hockey League in the quest for the greatest trophy of North American team sports, the Stanley Cup. This year, like every year, the playoffs have already been an incredible battle. Out of 71 games now, 38 have been decided by one goal, and 24 of those have gone to overtime, with a total of 30 overtime periods. And we're not done yet. So now I'd like to welcome to the show hockey expert Sean Gates. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm great, Joe. Thank you for having me.
As we speak right now, the Hooch story is the incredible fairy tale that is building, as the Montreal Canadiens have surprised everyone by taking a 3-2 lead over the heavily favored Vegas Golden Knights. This started out as a nice story about an original 6 Canadian squad that was the worst team to qualify for the playoffs. But now this has gotten serious. Tell me, Sean, in the immortal words of Vince Lombardi, what the hell's going on out here?
Well, I think Montreal is really playing their best hockey I've seen them play all year. Price, the goaltending, he had stopped 49 shots or 43 shots in the third game. And if everybody remembers that game, that was the game where Fleury knocked the puck out in front of the net, and wide open Ed Anderson put the puck in. I think that was the biggest momentum change. Like I said before, the Avalanche and the Knights are probably the fastest teams in the NHL right now. And as the Knights did to the Avalanche, slowing them down, it's like the Montreal took a playbook and they just started hitting and knocking Vegas off their game plan. The other thing I really see in my eyes that's the worst is the power plays. The Knights have not had any shots on goal during their power plays, and even if they do, they're not quality shots. I just really think that their defense and the way Price is playing, they're just really unstoppable right now. They just got hot at the right time.
Well, apparently Montreal was maybe rusty in game one when they lost 4-1. They did have 6 days off after sweeping Winnipeg because the Canadiens then won game two. But I totally agree with you that pivotal moment had to be in game three. 2 minutes left in the game. Vegas goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury lost control of the puck right in front of his own net and gave away the tying goal. And that had to have rattled his cage to the point he gave up the winning goal in overtime. Even then, the Golden Knights were still favored at minus 160 to win the series. That's when head coach Peter DeBoer turned to Robin Lehner to goaltend in game four. That turned out to be a brilliant move. Lehner won that game 2-1 in overtime. But curiously, DeBoer went back to Fleury in game five, and the Golden Knights went down 3-0 before losing 4-1. Sean, what would you have done before game five? And do you still think Fleury is the best goalie in the NHL?
I do think that Fleury is the best goalie in the NHL. I would have put Fleury back in for that game. If people remember, back in the Avalanche game, the Avalanche series, when they had Leitner in, they lost 7-1.
Yes, game one.
Now, they also had to go 7 games with St. Louis Blues before
Minnesota, right?
Or Minnesota, correct.
Yes.
With Minnesota before they played. And Avalanche, I think, had 4 days off, 5 days of rest before that game. So I'll give them that. I still think that Fleury is the best goalie. I would always put him out there before I'd put even Price. Even as hot as Price is right now, I think in the long term I would keep Fleury.
Well, personally, I was shocked to see Fleury in goal again after that performance by Lehner in game four. But you're right about Vegas. I mean, they're struggling on the power play. 4 out of their last 39 and 0 for their last 13 on the power play. You got to credit Montreal's penalty kill also, which has prevented goals in 28 straight penalty kill opportunities. It also seems Carey Price, Canadiens goaltender, has gotten inside the Golden Knights' heads as Vegas managed only 6 shots on goal in the first period of Game 5 after heavily outshooting the Canadiens through the first 4 games. Would you agree with that assessment, Sean?
Oh, yes, I would. I think that the offense for the Golden Knights right now are trying to get too cute, and I do believe that Price is in their head. Their defense is the one scoring the goals right now.
Well, so who would you pick now in the series?
I think that it's a really tall order for the Knights to go up to Montreal, and with that crowd going to be the way it is, and with Price being in their head, I just think it's a tall order for the Knights to go up there and win. I see Montreal winning in a low-scoring game. Both goalies are great. I wouldn't take the over on it. I'd still take the under.
Yes, I've been taking the under in every game in this series. I think only one went over out of all of them. And I would agree. Montreal closes it out now in 6. Montreal and under in game 6. They're at minus 170 to win the series. Not too bad, considering Vegas needs to win 2 games. But it really just goes to show, again, how unpredictable the NHL playoffs are. And they always are. How a team like Montreal, the worst team coming into the playoffs, is 1 game away from being in the finals. It's happened before.
Yes.
So, no surprise. Turning now to the other semifinal. The defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning are up 3-2 over the New York Islanders, with the Lightning having a shot to close out the series tonight. Tampa Bay got healthy right before the playoffs started, and boy did they miss Nikita Kucherov, who didn't play the entire regular season, but now has more assists, 22, than anyone else has points in the playoffs. And you can apparently count on goalie Andrei Vasilevsky, who is now 12-0 in games after a loss. Sean, what kind of chance do you give the Islanders of winning this series, especially after losing Game 5 8-0?
Yeah, I get very little. Even if they do win this game, which I don't think they will still have to play Game 7. And I just think that, again, it's a tall order, just like the Knights going up to Montreal. The Islanders could win this game, but there's no way I don't think that they're going to win the series. It's going to be Montreal and Tampa Bay for the Cup.
Well, we picked the favored Lightning to win a long series, and of course we'll stick with them now at minus 160. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but they'll meet Montreal in the finals. Is that the way you see it, Sean?
Yeah.
And what do you predict?
I predict, yes, that they'll meet each other, and I also predict that Montreal will win the Stanley Cup from Canada. It is a good thing if they do win it for Canada. It's good for the sport. It's good for their nation.
You can see Montreal slowing down Tampa Bay.
Yes, I can. If they can slow down the Knights, and the Knights can slow down the Avalanche, then yes, I can see them.
Well, that's certainly going to be an upset. Montreal has been such an underdog all the way through the series. Nothing's going to change.
No.
Even beating the Golden Knights, the favorites, isn't going to change the prices.
Because they're supposed to come out of the weakest division. I think they proved everybody wrong there. That they were this fourth-seeded team, if I remember correctly. They weren't even supposed to get past that. And look what they've done. Kind of just like I figured the Islanders, where I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, and they did. Just really shocking, surprising. But that's, like you said, Joe, that's what the playoffs are all about. It's not where you're seated. It's just get in.
That's right. You got to get hot at the right time. And a hot goaltender like Carey Price can carry you a long way. Well, for the Cup, I've now got to switch from Vegas to Tampa Bay, of course, at minus 140 as the Golden Knights are folding under the pressure. Being a Bruins fan, Boston Bruins fan, I can't pick Montreal to win at all. That would be like sacrilege. I can't do it. But a piece of me actually likes this Montreal story, and I wouldn't mind if they did win it. But it's going to be a tall order. Tampa Bay is starting to really get going and start scoring some goals.
It's going to be a great series.
I hope it is.
I hope it is too.
So our final subject today, we're going to move on to Major League Baseball. And the big news isn't really about betting lately. It's MLB's attempted crackdown on the pitchers' use of foreign substances. Now pitchers are stripping off their clothes in order to prove they're not cheating. How should the league handle this situation, Sean? And why start now in the middle of the season?
Well, we're talking about something that's been going on since the creation of the game that I know of. How I do think that this is the wrong time. I think if they were going to do it, they should have done it at the beginning of the season. But I do think they do need to crack down on it. The home runs have been up, scoring all over has been up. So I think it's, again, great for the sport. That's what the fans want. But we're talking about something that's been in the game forever. And to just come out all of a sudden and just make that rule now, I'm not a big fan of that. I think they should have waited till the off season.
Well, yeah, it is unusual that they would do this in the middle of the season, but it's certainly adding to the humor of the game.
Yes, it is.
And
Yes,
every
is.
sport could use a little humor. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. One other disturbing trend I've recently noticed is the programming of some of the San Francisco Giants games on the Peacock Network. Sean, do you know anything about the Peacock Network and how to watch it?
I have no clue.
Me neither.
I'm 53 years old, and all the technology I'm not really into. All I know is I really don't know what to say about it. I don't know how to get it, and I really do feel bad for the fans that can't watch their game or have to pay extra.
Well, apparently it's a video streaming service, and it's an NBC subsidiary of Comcast. And wow, for $4.99 a month, you can get it. And there are 42 million users as of April 29th. So there's more people than I thought that have this Peacock. So maybe one of your neighbors has it. You need to see a Giants game, you can go visit. But I know when you're going down to the casino and you want to watch the Giants, you're not going to be able to do that. So just a word of warning to anybody planning on having a little party and watching the Giants play. But anyway, one final subject is our big gambler here in this country, Mattress Mac. Tell me something about what you know about Mattress Mac. Sean.
Well, supposedly Tuesday he made a wager with William Hill Sportsbook of $2 million for the Astros to win the World Series this year at 10-1. So he would get $22 million if it would hit.
So he's this is not his first go at this.
No, it is not.
Has he been successful?
He hit the Super Bowl. They had to pay him $3.46 million. But then he put $1 million on the University of Houston basketball team at 9-1 and lost that. And the other big one that I know of is last year he had $10,000 on the Astros for $30,000 to win the World Series.
So what do you think of his chances? How are the Astros looking this year?
Well, right now they look really great. I just know that it's too early to tell because every time we get to the All-Star break, those who are in first drop down, whoever's in the middle move up. So right now they look all right. They look right where they should be. Are they going to win? It's way too early to tell. Too long of a season to tell.
Well, apparently he has the money to burn, a lot of mattresses laying around. So that's good for him. And but anyway, so that's going to do it for this week. I'd like to thank my guests, Charles O'Laughlin and Sean Gates. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show. And you'll hear us again next week on another episode of Covering the Field.
You've been listening to Covering the Field with your host, Joe Ellison, a CM World Services and the Sage production.